Hi, my name is Mikey Smith. I'm the Student Ministry Director here at Trailside. Thanks for stopping by. We hope that by the end of this message you feel encouraged, that you feel closer to Christ than you've ever did before, and that through its message you will want to be more like Jesus every single day. Enjoy the message, and thanks for stopping by.
I do mumble a little bit. So how's everybody doing? Good. Like the video said, my name is Riley Taylor. I am a junior at Furman University, and I have the pleasure of starting our series this week called No Perfect People. And they picked the most unperfect person to be the cover of it. No, I'm just kidding. So this series is going to be, I think, 4 or 5 weeks long. What's going to be is different staff members from Trailside are going to come and share their stories of hardship, heartache, whatever, and how God has used that to work for His glory. So I'm so excited to be here with you and share my story with you guys this morning. So I'm going to pray, and then we're just going to dive right in there. All right. God, we thank you for this day. We thank you for allowing us to come here together and talk about you and talk about what you've done in my life and in the lives of others through your word and through other things like stories. And so I pray that you would allow me to speak clearly and effectively and get your message across. So we love you and we thank you for who you are. In your name we pray, amen. So I was talking to my lovely girlfriend this week. She's over there, by the way. Her name is Paige. Everybody say hello, Paige. There you go, yeah. And I asked her, I said, what do you think what's the best sermon you've ever heard? How have they been delivered? And she said they've been relatable. They've been something that felt like it was a conversation with the audience. Something that felt that she could take home. And so she told me that I should probably tell a funny story because of how, dark some of my stuff is. But I don't have a funny story, so we're just going to dive right in. It's just going to be kind of sad. So, but no, it's going to be happy. And I'm going to try to make it relatable, and I'm going to try to make it something that you guys can take home, whatever age you are, and whatever you've been through. So bear with me. So the title of my sermon is Come As You Are, Don't Stay That Way. And as I mentioned in the video, I never want you guys to read that statement as, all right, so you can come to church now, and then by next week you better stop doing what you were doing last week, and then you can walk in and you won't catch on fire. Instead, I want us to read that in a way that, so let's think about it. Everyone here has something they've been through. Everybody has some sort of something that might haunt them, or I believe you do. If you don't, that's wonderful. But I think, like I said, everyone has something, whether that be the loss of a loved one, the estrangement from a loved one, the getting out of a relationship, whether it be depression, anxiety, financial issues, marital issues, you have something that you're going through, right? And so I think that statement, come as you are, don't stay that way, means you come as you are with what you have and with what you bear, and you let God come in and transform that into something beautiful that He can use to work for His glory and for the good of others. And I think that's what the series is about, and how we've all, those who are on staff, have experienced that and are bringing it together to form this church. And I hope you guys feel that community here, and we all want you to feel that community here. So what I'm going to do is we're going to look at 2 different biblical stories, and then I'm going to tell my story. And then we're going to look at Narnia. Yeah, it'll be a good time. Got to get some C.S. Lewis in there somewhere. If you guys will turn your Bibles to Genesis 16. Let me find it real quick. It's a little background on this story. This is after Abraham has been told that he's going to be the father of a great nation, and he is going to have many descendants, and he's going to be the patriarch of Israelite religion, right? Well, he's married to Sarah. Sarah's like 90, gray-haired, crow's feet everywhere, looking gross. And just kidding. Y'all look beautiful if you're over 90. God tells Sarah, hey, you're going to have a baby, actually. And she laughs and whatever else. So Sarah devises this plan. She says, okay, since I'm 90, there's no way I'm going to conceive. I'm also barren, so I'll just get you to conceived with my slave girl. Well, that's kind of whack, first of all, okay? Second of all, yeah, okay, but that's kind of, like I said, that's kind of whack, first of all. And second of all, her slave girl has no choice in the matter. So now, what I want to do is I want to read the story, and from the perspective of the slave girl, which her name is Hagar, and what she has to endure in that. I'm also reading my handy-dandy academic translation of Genesis. It's kind of cool. There's a lot of Hebrew stuff in it. I recommend it. Anyway, now Sarah, Abram's wife, had borne him no children, and she had an Egyptian slave girl named Hagar. And Sarah said to Abram, "Look, pray, the Lord has kept me from bearing children. Pray, come to bed with my slave girl. Perhaps I shall be built up through her." And Abram heeded the voice of Sarah, and Sarah, Abram's wife, took Hagar, the Egyptian, her slave girl, after Abram had dwelt 10 years in the land of Canaan, and she gave her to Abram, her husband, as a wife. And he came to bed with Hagar, and she conceived, and she saw that she had conceived, and her mistress seemed slight in her eyes. And Sarah said to Abram, "This outrage against me is because of you. I myself put my slave girl in your embrace." And when she saw she had conceived, I became slight in her eyes. Let the Lord judge between you and me. And Abram said to Sarah, "Look, your slave girl is in your hands. Do to her whatever you think right." And Sarah harassed her, and she fled from her. And the Lord's messenger found her by a spring of water in the wilderness, by the spring on the way to shore. He said, "Hagar, slave girl of Sarah, where have you come from and where are you going?" She said, "From Sarah, my mistress, I am fleeing." And the Lord's messenger said to her, "Return to your mistress and suffer harassment at her hand." And the Lord's messenger said to her, "I will surely multiply your seed, and it will be beyond all counting." And the Lord's messenger said to her, "Look, you have conceived and will bear a son, and will call his name Ishmael, for the Lord has heeded your suffering. And you'll be a wild donkey of a man, his hand against all, the hand of all against him. He will encamp in despite of all his sin." And she called the name of the Lord who had addressed her, El Roy. For she said, "Did I not go on seeing here after he saw me?" And that's the T right there. So, there's a lot going on there. There's a lot in the verse, or in the chapter. But what I want us to understand here is that Hagar had absolutely no choice in this matter. Hagar has completely just been sold off. Her body has been sold off to be nothing more than a conception for Abraham in order that he keeps his line going. And Hagar then, of course, is cast out because Sarah gets jealous because she has conceived her husband's child. And what I think is interesting is that Hagar would rather be in the wilderness without any sustenance, any water, anything, than stay and listen to Sarah berate her anymore. And so she's in a place where she's completely helpless. She's literally in the wilderness. She's found crying there. And I think the beauty of that is that's where a lot of us find ourselves. You guys ever been lost in the woods? Colt, you ever been lost in the woods? It's my brother, yeah. And you feel directionless. You don't know what's east, you don't know what's north, south, west, all the directions. And like I said, you're helpless. You don't know what's what. And the thing is that Hagar chooses that because of how bad the situation is back at home. And the beauty is she's there, and then God comes and finds her right where she is. And he calls her by name, which I think is awesome too. And he says, I'm trying to find my place. "Hagar, slave girl of Sarai, where have you come from and where are you going?" And of course she tells him that she's fleeing from her mistress. And then God, what I think is so cool is that God ultimately finds her where she is and calls her by her name. And he tells her, "You're going to have to go home because, ultimately she's going to have a child. She needs support. She needs support from Abraham. And she needs food. She's going to conceive a child." And then God promises her something. And he says that you will bear Ishmael, and Ishmael will be the father of a great nation. So Hagar has literally experienced the worst of the worst. Her body has been auctioned off to be nothing more than something to conceive, something that Sarah couldn't do. And she does all that she was supposed to do. She listened to her master. She listened to her mistress, whoever. And then yet she's still just catches the smoke, She just gets hit with it. And yet God finds her in the wilderness and says, here you are, and I will make you great. You just have got to trust me. You've got to decide that I am worth trusting in this and that I will make you the matriarch of a great nation. And I think what's beautiful is, honestly, I don't even know if Hagar has talked to God before this point ever in her life. And the beauty is, instead of Hagar being like, what the world was that? Instead, she calls God El Roy. In the Hebrew, that means the one who sees me. And then she responds and says, did I not go on seeing here after he saw me? And church, I want to argue that God sees us in our struggle. That God not only sees us in our struggle, but comes down with us in our struggle. He allows us to get through it. He makes life worth living through our struggle. And he's the one who sees us in that struggle. And so that takes us into the book of Job. Buckle your seatbelts. About to dive on in. All right. Anybody read the book of Job before? Okay. Less than I thought. All right, let's liven up. Come on. Woo! 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 Come on. Man, it's like I'm at a funeral. Come on. All right, the book of Job. Job, great, faithful man, has everything. Everything he could ever want. He has children. He has descendants. He has land. He has cattle. I mean, cattle's like the Beamer of old Israel, right? That's pretty cool. He has everything. And then, of course, Satan comes along one day and says, hey, God, look at your servant Job. I mean, I don't think he'd actually be faithful to you if you take all the stuff away. And then God's like, okay, let's see then. So then Satan decides, Then Job gets everything taken away. His children die. His land is taken away. It's stolen. His house is gone. His friends end up leaving him in the end. His skin even gets a terrible disease. And the whole book is Job lamenting that and saying, how could this have happened? What have I done wrong? And then his friends come in and say, Job, you must have done this, that, and the other wrong. And then, his friends end up getting rebuked by God. And God says, no, that's not how I work, whatever, so on and so forth. And God does not speak directly to Job until chapter 39. I'm not going to read all of it because I think you guys would zone out by then if you haven't already. And God basically just looks at Job and says, here's who I am. I've created all these things. I've done all these things. I created you. I created the people who took the things from you. I created the things that were taken from you. And I blessed you with the things that were taken from you. And then God says, I just need you to trust me in this. I need you to trust my goodness and in who I am. And then maybe we can get out of this together, And I think a part of this book that we miss a lot is Job's response to God after God gets done kind of roasting him. But basically God, says that he's with Job in the end and has been with him the whole time. So I'm going to read Job 42, verses 1 through 5. And we're going to unpack those. Like I said, this is after God has told Job who he is. And then Job answered the Lord and said, I know that you can do all things, and that no purpose of yours can be thwarted. Who is this that hides counsel without knowledge? Therefore I've declared that which I did not understand, things too wonderful for me which I did not know. Hear now, and I will speak. I'll ask you, and you instruct me, because my ears had heard of you, and now my eyes have seen you. I mean, that's crazy. You look at this, Job had heard his entire life of all of who God was from his friends, from, priests of the day. He had been given blessing upon blessing. Friends, family, land, the beamers of Israelite times, and given it all. And so therefore he was faithful in that, because it was so easy to be faithful then. He could hear of God because of all those things that were there. But then when all those things were taken away, he resolves by saying, now I can finally see you. I can see you within my struggle. And he met Job in his breaking. And I think that's what God does. I don't see come as you are and just don't stay that way as something of, like I said, something where you completely change who you are in order to become a Christian. I can't get behind that. I more believe that God comes into your broken situation, whatever that broken situation is, and transforms it into something beautiful to be used for his glory. And so that leads me into my own story. So if you thought the first however long was pretty heavy, it's about to be pretty heavy. But all right, we're still at a funeral, people. Come on, wake up. Sheesh. All right. But, yeah. So my story. Like the video said, I was raised in a Christian home, kind of, sort of. We would go to church every now and then. But I never thought God as anything other than some angry being in the sky that threw lightning bolts down and, caught people on fire. I'm going to pull a Sean here. That was a joke. So then, as my life progressed, I didn't really see any need for God. And then when I was 9, my parents split up. I kind of stopped going to church altogether. I was always close with my mom and my dad, and things were good. And so I took the divorce pretty hard. And my dad was kind of an interesting character. Did some things that I'm not proud of, and my family's not proud of. But after my parents split up, he kind of cleaned himself up a little bit, and things had looked better. Like he got a job down in Charleston, was working for the military, and was wrapping submarines, doing really cool stuff. And so we kind of thought he was turning himself around. He was thinking about moving back up here to be with us more, and I was looking up. And then July, right before I started my 8th grade year, July 4th, I got a call, and I got picked up and taken to go see my mom, and my mom was crying. And she told me that my dad had killed himself. And my life obviously hasn't been the same since then. And as a 13-year-old kid trying to process that, I don't know how you do process that, And I remember just being so angry all the time, angry at everyone, angry at everything, looking for meaning in anything other than God, honestly, which is natural, I think. And so I decided, I'll play football. Played football, loved football. Tore my ACL a month later after my dad had passed away. So then that was gone. So, just a good 2 months there. And then my mom actually started going to church, and she dragged me there. So I'd always played drums, and she dragged me there to play drums in the youth band at Northside Baptist Church. And I hated it. I really, really did. I thought church was such a joke. And now look at us. This is fun. And like I said, I hated it. I didn't believe in God. I didn't believe in whatever he said, whatever he revealed himself to be, or whatever people told me he was. I didn't want to believe, didn't think to believe. And I was playing drums one night at a youth conference, and then I remember the pastor speaking on, God as a father, and so on and so forth. And I was like, you know what? I think God is a father, if he is the perfect father that they say he is, would probably be a better father than the one that I have. And so that night, I honestly do believe I became a Christian and accepted Jesus' sufficient sacrifice to save me from hell, or save me from sin, save me from whatever. But I think what I expected was that night for all the pain to go away, for all of it just to vanish out of thin air and be okay, right? But like that's not how life works. And I dealt with that pain and still questioning like why if I'm following you, then why is there still pain? Why do I feel all these things? And I think the thing is that God meets us to where he feels that pain with us. And he walks with us in that pain. And that pain doesn't go away, not instantly, not in a day, not when you say a prayer. But I think this pain and just the struggle of life, I think I think he walks with us in that. And he comes down into the pit where we are and he fixes that eventually. And so now, I want to talk about how I honestly believe God to work in these stories. And so you're probably asking me, so what? So you've told us all these things, and you've said all these things. And everybody has pain, yeah, I get it. And you're probably wondering, so then what do we do? And my response is this. I think you should give God a chance. Maybe some of you in here are strong believers. Maybe there's something that you haven't given to him. Maybe there's something that you want to tight fist and you're scared. And guys, I invite you to invite him in and let him in and change that. And so I want to talk about a story from a great book called The Magician's Nephew. Narnia. Good fun. And in this story, I'm going to do my best to do this without crying because every time I talk about this story, I sob like a child. Woof. All right. So, you have Diggory, right? And Diggory is this guy who ends up in this magical land called Narnia, and that's kind of crazy in the first place. Great book series. Anyway, getting off track. And so Diggory, his mom is sick. His mom is dying. And so he hears of this special fruit that's in some other land that he decides that he's going to go and get so his mom can get well. Because they say that this fruit is supposed to heal you of all your sickness. And so Diggory goes to this other land, takes the fruit, and he comes back. And when he comes back, I don't know if you guys have heard of Aslan, the lion that he is, the representation of, most people think, God to be in the story. And when he comes back, he expects Aslan to start screaming at him and yelling at him and saying that you shouldn't have done this, you've sinned, you've done this, that, and the other. And so when Diggory walks back in the gate, he starts crying, and he's like, Aslan, will you please just understand, I had to steal this fruit because my mom is dying. It's the only possible way that I will be able to make her okay and to be able to have my mom, because I have nobody else but I have my mom. And as someone who only has a mom, I understand that, and I would have done the same thing. But like I said, Diggory is crying and just uncontrollable, sobbing. And when he looks, and when he's expecting Aslan to just yell at him and rebuke him and all these things. And when Diggory lifts up his head, he sees Aslan crying too. And I believe that's what our God does. I believe that when I lost my father, when Hagar was in the wilderness, when Job lost everybody, and they were crying where they were, I believe when they lifted their heads, I believe they saw God crying too. And I believe that is why we cannot stay the same when we come into contact with who God is. It's because he comes in and he feels the same pain that we do. And he transforms it into something beautiful. He transformed my father killing himself into me being able to be up here and share the good news of who he is. And share that with every single one of you here this morning. And granted, I'm not the most eloquent and I'm not the best public speaker. But still, he's gotten his point across, I hope. And I hope you guys know that he's crying with you through your pain too. And he's here with you. And I pray that you guys give him a chance to let him cry with you. And life is hard, guys. No joke. No stops. Life is hard. But he comes in and he cries with you and he feels your pain. And so give it to him. Give it to him. And if any of you guys need to talk after the service, I'm here, of course. And I hope that this was something that you guys can take home and something that impacted at least one of you in here today. So I'm going to pray, and then we're going to sing one more song, and we'll get out of here. And hope that the Browns win today, Sean.
We hope you enjoyed today's message, that you feel so encouraged by who God is and by who he thinks and knows you are as well. If you have any questions about our ministry or our church, you can check us out at trailside.church, find us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. You can also download our app from the iTunes or Android store. Thank you so much and have a great day.